Everybody assumes that buying a cheap car is going to be cheap to run, but that's not always the case. Sometimes there's the odd cheap car that's the biggest heap of junk, and it'll literally cost your second born, as well as keeping you on the service manager's mailing list. That's the last place you want to be, but guess what? I'm going to share a list of 5 garbage, cheap cars under 25 grand you don't want to touch with a 25-foot pole. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. The first one on the list is this little hot rod in red, and you definitely don't want to keep it because not only is it cheap at $20,000 US, yeah, you can get into a car that's very affordable, but it's basically throwaway. It's like buying a pizza and throwing out the pizza box when you're all done. Not a great vehicle. I'm just being quite frank with you, and there's a few issues and reasons why that is. Even at 20 grand, you don't want to buy this. It's cheap, yes, but you don't want it. I mean, I see how people get sucked in. They like buying this because this little Kia looks cute. It's the Soul, yeah. It has a very squared off back end, looks very unique. And yeah, it does have a lot of great features like alloy wheels, great color keyed handles, beautiful little mirrors that are also colored to match, wonderful LED headlights on the front end. Of course, you've got great grills now and wonderful little lights on the front end, and a very boxy look, almost looks like the Ford Edge. The interior is very versatile, not the highest quality. It feels like a fishing tackle box, but it works. So why do you not want this car at any cost? Well, in case you haven't really seen, the NHTSA has tons of recalls associated with many of these burning up roadside, in some cases actually hurting people, and that's the worst part. What you don't want to have is a vehicle actually injuring or worse the occupants. That's sadly, allegedly, what's been happening with some of these vehicles, and a lot of it has to do with the engine. But let's talk about a few of the other issues. Some customers are complaining about knocking noises in the front there when you're turning full lock. Click, 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 knock, knock, knock. So it's making front end noises. Some other issues are a ticking noise under the hood, tick, tick, and you don't even know what it is. But believe me, we know what it is because there's been lots of recalls associated with that. Well, the knocking noise could be part of an issue too, because the knocking noises, you're actually rod bearings. In 2012 to 16 are the worst years, but they're clearly all too much of a risk for me to even advise. You definitely want to stay away from them, because if I was a bet man and the trends and you extrapolate and draw a best fit line, this will fit in right perfectly with some of the older generations, and it's rod knocks. Because some of the machining, the metal from the machining wound up in the oiling passages, plugged them off, caused overheating and excess cooking of those rod bearings, and of course resulted in burning. Catastrophic failure often meant as little as 80,000 miles and you could have an engine that basically seized, blew up, or even worse, in some cases they burned roadside. Sure, Kia put in a knock sensor to detect if you have that noise, because the knock sensor can detect early on whether it's starting to see some of those problems at the bottom end of the engine. But the sad part is, all that is a band-aid. That's just a detection point, just to tell you, the owner, that get your schwanz back into the dealership and get the car looked at. It's not there to necessarily prevent the engine from breaking. The engine's going to break if it's going to break, and very unpredictably so. So the bottom line is, the Kia Soul, as cute as it is and as good a value as it appears to be, definitely don't want to buy one of those. So another heap that I can't recommend is this little unit here. Starts about $25,000. Chevy product, enough said, but let's take a look around. Beautiful front grille and fascia, of course, great headlights on this vehicle. I love that design theme for sure. I think they had it nailed here. Of course, plastic to protect from the rocks that come off the road, which does a great job all the way along from front to side. Everything's protected there. Of course, you have this great little aluminum look here, but it is plastic. It's not actually aluminum by any means. And what we're looking at is a Trailblazer all-wheel drive, and this is the LT version. Does look very sporty from the back here. As you see that overhang, all kinds of piano gloss black here, roof rack here, and an interior that looks quite sporty, spunky, and again, looks better than probably what you would expect for 25 grand, although it does still feel a bit Fisher Price. What kind of drivetrains are you expecting in this? Well, first of all, you get a 9-speed automatic, and even worse, if you can imagine, the engine is a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder engine. Wow, no power, and it's working too hard to move this vehicle down the road. So clearly it's overstressing. It's going to wear out way before its time, but there's a lot of problems creeping up already in this late model Trailblazer. For example, missing front seatbelt attachment bolts. Of course, that would be a big safety hazard. We also have equipment failure, all kinds. Interior and body parts aren't necessarily holding up the best. You get excessive road noise, even though you have a road type tire. People complain about road noise, but that's what you get in a $25,000 vehicle. We get the body shakes. Whoa, shaky, shaky coming down the road. Tons of recalls throughout this vehicle. A very sluggish engine, which I already referred to as a 3-cylinder. What would you expect from that? But people are complaining there. The electric brake booster, there's your brakes, and of course the booster's up there, but clearly not enough oomph, and that's been a problem as well. Speed control issues. We also talk about some people complaining about too stiff of a ride for what it is. Transmission performance isn't the greatest. Even with it being a 9-speed automatic, it somehow just doesn't find the right gear. There's also electrical problems throughout, and the climate control has been noted to be problematic, so not a well-liked vehicle. And for $25,000, I'd say keep your money or go somewhere else. The next one on the list is this little unit, and it's a Chevy. What is it? A Sonic? Yeah, and it's the LT version. So these vehicles started about $17,000. They no longer make them. They were last produced in October of 2020, so you'll probably still find some 2021 model year vehicles around here. And at 17 grand, it seemed like a great deal, but let's take a look first and I'll explain some of the issues. Basic cheap looking tail lights, of course, in this Chevy. Very similar to the Cruze, slightly smaller. Of course, you do get alloy wheels, which looks like a nice fringe benefit. Simple, cheap little handles, almost looks like a Honda Civic. Of course, we have a little basic mirror, looks like the Civic as well. Yeah, great headlights on there of this little Chevy. And what kind of problems would you anticipate with this vehicle? From engine to transmission to electrics, how about cooling system leaks? Yeah, engine oil leaks. Check engine lights that can't be found, and it costs thousands of dollars trying to diagnose some of the issues. Just means even as little as 30,000 miles, you might find some minor problems or a major. If it's a major, you're talking up to $3,500 to $4,000 to fix that transmission issue. It might need sluggish acceleration, delayed shifting, hard shifting, no shifting at all, and that is clearly an issue. Of course, there's also transmission failure from the turbine shaft fracture. Of course, 2014 is the worst, and that's going to cost you some big dollars. We also can't forget about the random stalling or the fail to start. These are clearly a dud in every capacity. So even at a meager $17,000, what appears to be good value, it's definitely not value add, and it's one that is basically throwaway and not worth the trouble. Another vehicle that's definitely not worth the trouble. What we're looking at here, it's this great little Nissan product. What is it? Well, let's take a quick look. Of course, people like these because they have some great design themes. This one has all kinds of different accents and colors. Yeah, you have this big bulbous looking light, and what's this? I don't know, a couple of bug eyes going on there. Yeah, Nissan, so that means stands for bad transmissions with CVTs. Of course, back there you have this great little wing, and of course, great rocker panels. Look at the tail end of this car. Looks quite weird and obnoxious, but there it is, and people like them. Not sure why, in this Juke. And this is the SV all-wheel drive version. And these vehicles do start at about $25,000. The problem is there's way too many issues, and then you have to be caught driving this thing. Manual clutch issues are one of the big problems. CVTs, so the rubber band transmission, Jatco style, is a big issue with some of these vehicles. Recalls? You betcha, more than their share. As well, loose timing chains rattling and clinking, potentially jumping a cog, and then you got really big problems. Fuel leaks that potentially could lead to a boom, as well as blocked oil lines, causing all kinds of problems. These vehicles are plagued with issues, not the greatest representation of Nissan, and clearly with that transmission, it's one that you need to stay away from. Basically a throwaway car. Sadly, I hate to admit, the next trash bag of a car that's under 25 grand is what's right behind me here. Well, it is all-wheel drive, and it's a Hyundai, of course, but it's a Kona specifically. Not the electric version, but the gas jobby for sure. What do we have here, and why do people even buy these? I mean, yeah, you got LED taillights, looks modern, and you have this cool little accent detail there. Look at those little handles, so cute, and yeah, one-touch accent in there you go. Little mirrors, oh, how cute is that little piece right there? Of course, you got all kinds of plastic along to protect the vehicle from the rocks off the road. It's great. Yeah, you do get alloy wheels. And the interior doesn't actually look all that cheap. It looks fairly reasonable. You do get a sunroof on top too, which is an extra bonus for this vehicle. And a pretty decent styling detail. Looks sharp, looks sporty for a subcompact SUV or SAV. Well, what we have here is a whole host of problems. That's the unfortunate part. Even at $22,000, well under that 25 grand threshold, it still represents a vehicle that you would likely probably throw away at some point with a reasonable amount of miles on it. Some owners have complained about it just randomly stalling, check engine lights, and that's usually related to some of the other problems which we'll get into. Of course, that wonderful 2-liter NU MPI engines in as little as 100,000 miles are going to possibly start piling up. Catastrophic, boom! And it might either blow up or seize up or just start smoking out of the tailpipe or just stop altogether. Now, a lot of it is the connecting rods. Of course, we talked about the machining process with some of the Hyundais and Kias. Over 3 million vehicles impacted, allegedly, because of some bad machining process, got metal in the cooling passages for the oil and blocked that oil from getting to the rod bearings. And then you get a knock, 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 or a clicking noise that seems to emanate from the bottom of the engine. That's usually where it starts. You hear a knocking or a ticking noise, and then it usually gets worse and worse, sometimes with no notification at all, and then the engine just goes boom, and it's all over. And in many cases, customers are put out. Sure, they might, in some cases, get new engines on warranty. These companies had to extend their warranty to 10 years because people lost confidence. But that doesn't change the fact that the engines are what they are. Then they came along with the knock sensor. Well, that was just a preventative measure to preventively capture when that knocking starts to happen at a very subliminal level that you can't even barely hear. The system will pick it up and alert you. Just basically long enough to get your vehicle to the dealer, but usually a lot of these finish themselves off in short order. Some issues also evolved with bad airbags, and a lot of it had to do with the electrics. So there's electrical problems with this thing, the CarPlay problems, and some cases the engine would just start to stall and you couldn't restart it. There were some running issues and drivability problems with some of these vehicles. There's also some problems with the forward collision avoidance system. Customers have complained about that, as well as the transmission in the drive, where they step on the gas and all of a sudden they hear a squealing and howling noise. Let up, it goes away. Take it into the dealer, they can't quite find out what the problem is. Sometimes it just meant you had to top up the fluid, and it was just even a matter of poor maintenance. So whatever the case, there's lots of little nickel and dime issues: electrics, engine, transmission, noises, you name it. Those are the key big items. If you have a bad engine, that could cost you 5 to 10 grand. Bad transmission, that may cost you $4,000 to $5,000, and bad electrics could cost you unlimited, because it could spend lots of time in the shop paying their $180 shop rate per hour. So it is a horrible vehicle, certainly not one that I would recommend. And for that 25 grand, keep it in your pocket. Maybe buy something different like this great little Mazda CX-3. Much more reliable, and you'll keep more of that money in your pocket. And with all of that said, check that video out. You're gonna love it, because that's my video of some of the cheapest, most reliable cars under 25 grand you should and could buy today. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.